If you've been following the headlines about tech in Africa, you've probably seen a ton of optimism around AI, right? The whole narrative is about growth, opportunity, a continent just leaping into the future. But what if the real story, the one that's kind of hidden in the numbers, is a lot more complicated? Today, we're going to ask a much tougher question about who really ends up benefiting.
And yeah, that optimism, it kicks off with some absolutely massive numbers. A major report from McKinsey estimates that AI could add up to $100 billion to Africa's economy annually. I mean, that's a huge, potentially transformative figure that gets a lot of attention, and for good reason.
And look, this isn't just some far-off dream. We're seeing this happen right now, on the ground. Over 40% of African institutions are already experimenting with or even deploying generative AI. This shows the continent isn't waiting around, it's happening now.
And just to round out this really positive picture, analysts are projecting about a 9% boost to Africa's GDP by 2030, all thanks to AI. So on the surface, everything looks fantastic. High adoption, huge economic potential, sounds like a clear win. But is it?
And this is where the entire story flips on its head. This one question from Nexdel Intelligence changes everything. It shifts our focus from what the economic gain is to who actually gets to control it. Who owns the pipes.
So that gets us to the absolute heart of what we're talking about today. This critical and honestly often overlooked difference between just using AI technology and actually owning the foundational systems that make it all work. And here it is, the number that completely reframes the whole conversation. Africa's share of global AI capital deployment? It's approximately 0%. That's right. While billions are being poured into building the core of AI around the world, almost none of that investment is happening on the continent. This is the elephant in the room.
And that right there, that's the core of the problem. The current model basically positions Africa not as a builder or an owner in this new AI economy, but as a customer. That $100 billion gain doesn't come from creating AI, it comes from subscribing to AI services that are built and controlled somewhere else.
So to really get why this is such a big deal, we got to talk about something called the AI production stack. The easiest way to think about it is like a pyramid. At the very bottom, you've got the hardware, the powerful computers, what we call compute. Then you have the massive data sets used for training. And then at the top, you have the AI models themselves. Owning these layers is what makes you a producer, not just a consumer.
Okay, so this chart, it zeroes in on the single biggest deficit. According to the African Development Bank, when it comes to that foundational hardware layer, the compute and infrastructure, Africa scores just 22 out of 100. The global average is 63. I mean, this isn't a small gap, it is a structural chasm. And hey, it's not just about the hardware. As you can see from this table, the gap is, well, it's everywhere. In talent and skills, in innovation and capital, and even in data systems, Africa is lagging way behind the global average. This tells us it's a systemic problem, and it's going to need a systemic solution. Now, if all of this is giving you a little bit of déjà vu, well, it should. This isn't some new thing that's only happening with AI. We are seeing a pattern repeat itself, one that has really defined Africa's relationship with big tech waves for decades.
This really lays out that whole cycle of dependency. First up was mobile, which was all about consuming devices and services. Then came the cloud, consuming storage and computing power from abroad. Then came social media, where millions of Africans create incredible content, but they don't own the platforms. And now AI seems to be following that exact same script. Tons of adoption, but no production.
But here's the thing, and this is really important. The stakes are so much higher this time around. AI is a different beast entirely. It actually rolls up the value from all the previous waves. It captures user data, it captures enterprise spending on the cloud, and it captures our attention, all at the same time. This makes owning that upstream part of the AI stack more powerful and more profitable than it has ever been. So all this dependency, it forces us to ask some really tough practical questions, like who gets to decide how much African businesses have to pay for AI services? Who gets to process and profit from all of Africa's unique data? Where do the continent's best and brightest AI researchers end up working? And the big one, how much of that $100 billion prize actually stays in Africa?
Okay, so we've laid out the problem pretty clearly. The big question now is, what do we do about it? Well, the good news is the path to changing this whole dynamic isn't some big mystery. It just requires a very deliberate shift from a consumption mindset to a real strategy of production and ownership.
And the source material actually gives us a really clear 4-point playbook for this. First, achieving what's called compute sovereignty by building up regional GPU clusters. Second, reallocating capital away from short-term app development and into long-term foundational AI research. Third, creating and, crucially, retaining ownership of high-quality African datasets. And finally, implementing a serious state-backed industrial policy for AI.
And look, this isn't some pie-in-the-sky idea. This is a proven strategy. It's basically the playbook that countries like India and China used to climb up the value chain and become huge players in the global tech stack. They made a strategic choice that just being a consumer on the downstream end wasn't good enough.
All right. So as we start to bring this all together, we're left with two very different but equally true ways to look at this exact moment for AI in Africa. It's really a choice of which narrative you focus on. On one side, you've got the super optimistic take. High adoption rates, $100 billion in potential, and this young, dynamic population that's ready to embrace new tech. And that's all true. But then on the other side, you have the structural reality. A deep dependency on foreign systems, on foreign infrastructure, and on pricing that Africa doesn't control. And that's also true.
And that leaves us with the final, most important question. We know both of these realities exist at the very same time. The real question is which one of these two readings is going to guide the decisions made by policymakers, by investors, and by innovators across the continent. Because the answer to that is what will decide Africa's role in the AI economy for generations to come.